Hey everybody, it's Angel, and today we're going to have an art class, and I'm going to be making quartz nails, although they kind of look like a marble pattern, and they also look like water in a weird way, so I guess these could be whatever you want to call them. I watched a really cool nail tutorial from the Nail Engineer here on YouTube. By the way, that's a really great username. And she did a rose quartz pattern using sheer gel polish and white acrylic paint. And I was like, oh my god, I need to do this. But instead of recreating it exactly, I decided to do it a little bit differently, and I used regular nail polish, and instead of just sheer polish, I busted out my favorite nail medium, Sharpies. So before I started painting, I prepped my supplies because I didn't want to be messing around with them while my nails were wet. First up, we need some alcohol, and I'm not talking about the kind you drink. I'm talking about 91% isopropyl rubbing alcohol. This allows for us to turn the Sharpies into more of a watercolor paint. Then I take this little itty bitty baby dish, but you could also just use a shot glass, and it helps if you squirt the alcohol all over. And then I grab my Sharpie, or you could use Sharpies, plural. I use the brush style tip Sharpie, but you totally don't need to use that one. You could just use the fine tip Sharpie, but my boyfriend actually bought me a set of these brush tips because, bless his little heart, he said, yeah, I know how you love to do Sharpie nailer. I thought with the brush, you could just paint it on your nail like nail polish. Aww. Then I grabbed a piece of foil to use as a paint palette and just put on a good old coat of that blue Sharpie. To apply the Sharpie and also to apply the white acrylic paint, I'm using the 00 brush from Twinkled T. You kind of want a brush that has a little bit of meat to it, but not like super huge. That sounds really gross. Please ignore what I just said. For my base coat, I used Super Chic Lacquer Bring It On Base Coat. So the trick to getting that quartz-like appearance, you kind of want to use something that's very sheer. So I chose OPI Bubble Bath, which is like a sheer beigey pink color. And then I applied one coat of Bubble Bath, and yes, it's looking a little streaky, but it doesn't really matter because everything I'm going to put over it is going to cover all that up. The only thing I would change about this design is I should have did 2 coats of OPI Bubble Bath here. I think that just would have helped the design just a little more. And once dry, then I took my brush and dipped it into the rubbing alcohol, and then you kind of paint over the Sharpie on the foil, and this dissolves the Sharpie and lets the brush pick it up like a paint. So now we can paint the Sharpie onto our nail, and one tip that I have is to try not to pick up a ton of the blue vodka. We're just going to call it blue vodka from now on, because it's going to flood your cuticles if you have too much liquid on there. And Sharpie, you can clean it up with the alcohol, but it's not going to clean up 100%. So try to avoid getting it on your skin. And I just applied it in sort of a diagonal pattern, and I tried to leave it more sheer in some areas and build it up in others. And I tried to alternate the patterns. So I didn't want to do the same exact pattern on all of the nails. I tried to make them look a little bit different. So now to do the veins in the quartz design, I used white acrylic paint, and again with my tinfoil paint palette, just squirted a little bit out. And I don't recommend using the acrylic paint at 100% strength, so I'm diluting it with some water. It's just going to be easier to work with, and it's going to give more of that sheer flowy look. With my brush loaded up with a little bit of the paint, I applied it along the edge of the blue color because I just thought that that would look more like the veining pattern, and I'm going to be going back and forth between the water and the acrylic paint. So you want to apply the acrylic paint and then use the water to sort of move it around and remove some of it so it's looking thicker in some parts and thinner in others, because then it gives the appearance that that white vein is kind of moving up and down within the layers, and it's going to give you more depth. And when I was looking at some quartz images online, I noticed that a lot of them had some just sheer white milky areas to them. So that's why I was trying to apply some of that acrylic mixture to the parts that I didn't apply the Sharpie to. It's just going to be a lot of back and forth between the water and the acrylic paint. So here are what the other nails looked like with the first layer of Sharpie and acrylic paint, and off camera the other nails were much quicker to do. After I did the first one I was like, oh my god, this is gonna take forever, but when I'm not filming it's usually much quicker. So if you look at a quartz stone closely, you'll often see like a super fine shimmer running through it. So I went with this pearl white mica powder. It is super, super fine, and it doesn't really have like any sort of hollow look to it. It's just a silver shimmer, and I think it ended up being perfect for this. So using a little brush, I picked up a little bit of the powder and just sort of tapped and sprinkled it onto my nail, and then I blew it off, and then using my finger, I just tapped it in. And I think this worked great because it allowed me to get it where I wanted to, but it was still a little bit random looking. And then I applied another layer of OPI Bubble Bath, and as you can see, it just really starts to make everything look nice and milky and translucent, and you can see the quartz started to come through. For this layer, I used much less of the blue Sharpie. I made sure to only pick up a very small amount with the alcohol and to go over those portions that I left blank earlier. I just wanted it to be a very sheer wash of color. And then I added a little bit more of the Sharpie over some of the other blue just to deepen it up a little bit, while also making sure to have the blue Sharpie go over the white acrylic paint. Otherwise, it's just going to stand out too much and it's not going to look like it's the layer underneath. Moving on to more acrylic paint. For this layer, I felt like I had to be a little bit more strategic with my placement. So I put the veins in almost the opposite direction as the layer underneath to look like they were crisscrossing over it. And I tried not to make them just be like, an X pattern, just completely covering it over. I tried to follow some of the patterns that I made with the Sharpie. I felt like it just looked a little more natural that way because these nails are so natural. Oh my god, how many times do I go back and forth? And then I did a little bit of cleanup because my skin was just looking a little crazy at this point. So I used my favorite cleanup brush, the number 6 brush from Twinkled T and 100% acetone. Then I applied a little bit more of the mica pearl powder. And my favorite part is when you can see me like blowing it off. Okay, who wants a fun little side story? When I was about 16, I was at my friend's house with my then boyfriend, and his mom was there, so it was totally normal. And we found his old like chemistry science experiment kit. So we were just kind of messing around with it and doing the experiments. And so we were mixing some of the powders, and I went to blow on the powder to get it off of something. And at that point, my boyfriend had blown the powder, so I was like inhaling, and I I inhaled this like mystery powder, and we all thought that I was going to die. So his mom called the poison control hotline, and they they said I was going to be perfectly fine, but they had called home to my mom, and when I got home, my mom thought that I had like OD'd on some drugs. Like, she did not believe me. She had to call my friend's house to talk to his mom to make sure that I was not lying to her. Story time with Angel. And now that we're all not dying, my nails are finished and I could apply the top coat. I used Super Chic Lacquer Liquid Macro Top Coat. And I tried to float the brush over the nails because I did apply a lot of that mica pigment and I didn't want to pick it up. So I floated the brush over it to keep the pigment on my nails. So instead of wasting God knows how many minutes trying to clean up that powder with my cleanup brush, I just decided to let the top coat dry and then go wash my hands, and that completely solved the problem. And if you're like me, you want to see what other Sharpie colors look like, all right? And this is the same exact technique, just using the dark purple Sharpie. And isn't she beautiful? And this is a hot pink Sharpie, and the only difference here is I added another layer of Bubble Bath over the top of that last layer, and it gives it a little bit more of a milky appearance. And this is with matte top coat. Oh my goodness, this is so pretty. I don't know what I like better, the glossy or the matte. So that completes the tutorial for my blue Sharpie marble water nails, whatever they are. And I'm gonna do a little smug self-horn tooting over here. I am really proud of these. I love how these came out. Sometimes you just gotta toot your own horn, am I right? And if this is your first time watching me, just run far away, don't subscribe, and just ignore me. But if you want to toot your own horn with me, dual self horn tooting. You can also follow me on Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter at twy_star. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.